afternoon, evening, and good morning. Welcome to the William Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio, UCY TV. Gonna have all kinds of fun science experiments today. Darwinism. Let me get this article. So I got up the other day, and there on one of the FBI social network groups that I follow, Electric Universe groups, was an article coming out of some research at Rice University, which is a Texas university. Rice University is, some of the political science areas are associated with oil, with the oil barons. The Baker Group, the James Baker Group at Rice University, actually put out an article in 2001 that really prefigured the 9/11 move and the move into Afghanistan and Iraq especially. And I've talked about that. I've talked about it many times, talked about it in my book. But they're probably on the other side of campus, not affiliated with the people trying to rule the world by owning all of the oil. It was a self-funded little startup propelled by the researchers who admit they quietly did this work, probably for not wanting to be bothered, not wanting to have to ask permission, not wanting to have to be monitored. And they've related some, I think, very interesting results that help put the nail in the Darwin coffin and are another aspect of the electric universe. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Let's see where we are. Is the show over yet? No, minute 38. Okay. I'm a little sleepy. I'm not tired, I'm just sleepy. And before you forget what you're listening to, yes, the coffee enema are becoming not fast and furious, but more regular and with less drama. I've learned the ounce edge, how many ounces can be held comfortably. And let me explain something to all of you. If you've never listened to the show before, I'm going to offend you. This is a stream of consciousness show. You will be offended at some point. Jesus is probably not an historical figure. Religion is a terrible thing to do to a mind. Myth is a way that we record history, the big events of history, in a way that is memorable to our superhero-loving brains. Science is myth that thinks it's math. Science is mythology or religion with a little math on the surface. We're still living somewhere between the 16th century and oblivion. We're going to run low on the oil that has been cheap and free and abundant, more or less free, and we're going to run back into a previous century. There is work that could be done to help us in understanding electricity, electromagnetism. The Sapphire project, which is funded in some way or related to thunderbolts.info, I think hit the fusion button last year in trying to replicate a sun inside of a box. I'll tell you more about that. So there are hopeful things on the horizon if we could get our heads out of our NASA's black holes. No, it's not a coffee joke. It's not a coffee enema joke. It's just they believe in things that aren't true. What else is one of the operating planks of the show? Oh, yes, our fascination with boiling water to make electricity has cost us all probably our lives, or at least the health of the planet, in taking unstable heavy molecules, heavy atoms, and using them to burn them to boil water to spin a wheel to make electricity. That's called nuclear power. Greatest, most destructive thing, greatest disaster that we've ever built, and it's happening all over the world that these things are being built in. The old ones are falling apart. So there's a summary to what you're listening to. I do curse when I feel like it. I don't feel really cunty right now, but there was my first one of the show. Fuck. Okay, kids. Either put the cotton in or take it out of your ears. I have written about Darwinism. Darwinism is not a science. Darwinism is an anti-theist point of view. We were stuck with Yahweh did it, we do it because Jesus likes us or whatever. We do it because we're supposed to like Jesus. Really a mythologized, Jesus was really a mythologized way to understand the fall of Judaism during the Roman era. The Jews always thought that they were going to come back with a bang and win, and they didn't. They were destroyed in 67 and then 70, and then from 70 until 130 or so AD as we date time ridiculously from an event that didn't happen. That would be the birth of a certain guy in a certain part of the Levant, and everybody agrees that they have no idea when that date would be. So we date ourselves arbitrarily from somewhere in the period of the Roman Empire as given to us by the Roman bureaucracy that took over the Christian church, which was really a revamping of Judaic, I'm going to say Judaic messianic prophecy, which said that somebody would come along and return the Jews to their once proud place. But if you understand all of that as superhero stories, about as real and relevant as Spider-Man or Superman, which are real and relevant. I mean, you see that they're the most popular things on the planet, so you can't say that they're not real or relevant. But they're not historical. They represent something, but they're not exactly historical. Then you can look back in the ancient books, the Torah and the ancient books of the Babylonian sort of mythologized memory. And you see that in their mythologized memory, they share the common mythologized memory or belief, or the strange tale that there was a giant flood, a giant overlaying of water onto land. There was fire in the sky. You then look at history and you see that North America was burnt to a crisp in the western states, that there was fire and oil falling from the sky, according to the locals living there in Mexico and the Nevada and the Southwest, Utah. And there was, rivers of fire and fire from the sky and glowing in the sky, and then periods of great darkness that lasted for a long time. Then you can begin to match that with the geological record, the anthropological record, and you see that in fact there was a mass extinction around this period of, 12,000, something like that, 10,000 years ago. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. It's called the Younger Dryas. I'm not exactly sure why it's called the Younger Dryas. I'll look that up. And you see that around the world there seems to have been an intense conflagration of, let me say, atmospheric phenomenon. Atmospheric phenomenon. So we'll get back to that. Hold that thought. So that's an overview of all the stuff that's going on in the show, and sort of I'm spilling out the Pandora's box of stuff that you don't want me to talk about, but I'm going to talk about. So if you haven't listened to the show before, we're going to talk about that. Now, Darwinism is a fake science that rejected theism. And theism was the idea that there was a God whose identity was really shifted and shifted and shifted from the Old Testament, Babylonian, Levantine, the stuff from Palestine, now Israel, the idea of an angry God, an angry war God, that was worshipped by the southern tribe close to Egypt of what we now call Jews, or in the northern tribe really worshipped Elohim and the varieties of gods. Asherah was the female consort, and Yahweh was the war god, the equivalent of, let's say, Thor, or maybe Odin, or Zeus, or Indra, really specifically Zeus and Indra. Now, why would you worship a thunder god, a lightning god? Maybe because, again, of these atmospheric phenomena that were going on that are now being recorded at the period of extinction. And you see in the works of Russell Schoch, S-C-H, like my name, S-C-H-E-F-F, but S-C-H-O-C-H, I think, is his name, who talks about Rapa Nui, or what we call, in a silly way, we call Easter Island, because it was discovered on Easter, but it's Rapa Nui, with the giant carved heads. And there's strange hieroglyphs that nobody's ever been able to figure out that look like, well, what do they look like? There's a guy called Anthony Perrott, and he is a plasma researcher. He was working at the government Los Alamos lab on a supercomputer, and he could work with electromagnetic discharge and model it, and even, use these very well-funded government labs to recreate plasma. Now, plasma is the most common state of matter in the universe. It's what the sun is. It's what lightning is. It's what the flash bulbs in some cameras are, if they're certain kinds of flashes, or that neon lights are. I think plasma. I'm not sure what plasma TVs are actually. You know what? I should look that up. Are plasma TVs really plasma? They might be. But the idea is you take a gas that has some charged particles in it. That's electrons and ions. And ions are atoms that have an electron stripped off, so that they can pass more electrons around them. So they act as conductors, and they move down a stream. And the ions move one way, they're charged positively, and the electrons move the other way, and they're charged negatively. So you have a stream going in two directions, which is sort of the strangest thing about electricity. And in a way, it's hard to understand. It kind of is hard to understand. We don't really know how. We think of a river, and you can't have a river flowing in two directions. Unless you, of course, do the experiment where you take water, and you take 2 beakers of water, and you put an electrode in each, and you charge the water, and then the water leaps from one beaker to another and creates a round bridge, a tunneling bridge across the lip of the beaker from one to the other. And the water on the outside is going in one direction, the water on the inside is going in another direction. Isn't that interesting? Oh, all the things that we do not know about electricity. We do not know. And we have not researched it because we've been stuck in this, well, Darwinian Big Bang universe. Let me get back to Darwin for a second. Darwinism is not a science. Darwinism came about because religion owned the sciences. And religion said that Yahweh, well, they didn't call it Yahweh, they called it God. Because if you called it Yahweh, you gave too much to the Jewish idea, which was really the Babylonian idea of an angry, fiery thunder god, which may, like Indra in the south in India, Indra, like Zeus in Greece, and like the various gods in Mesoamerica that represented the angry sky. And there are many of them. Now, why would you worship? I mean, we can be scared by lightning, but we only see lightning once in a while, and they only see lightning once in a while throughout the world. Unless you're in some tropic area that just gets a lot of lightning storms, I guess you'll have a god of lightning. It can be scary, but it forms, predictable patterns, and it's interesting and it's scary, and most of the time it doesn't kill people, and sometimes it strikes the ground. Sometimes it strikes water near you. It always strikes something. What I mean is it sometimes it strikes the ground near you and sometimes it strikes water near you, but mostly it doesn't. So, we say, okay, they worshipped it because they were stupid. They were small-minded and stupid, and they worshipped the wind and they worshipped lightning. Okay, maybe. Or they came through a period of history where the atmosphere and the outer atmosphere and the Earth's relationship with space at that time, maybe due to, well, we'll talk about that, was extraordinarily charged. And so the lightning displays were much more ferocious. And with more lightning comes more wind and more weather and more tornadoes and more of that, because these are all electromagnetic effects. All of it. All weather is electromagnetic, which is why the CO2 climate change modelers have such a bad time predicting weather, because it's electromagnetic. And we will talk about that more. I'm going to stick with Yahweh on the way to Darwin for a second. So if the ancients worshipped the lightning that was occurring at the time, they would be worshipping an event that would be so enormous that it would color their vision, that it would truly fill the sky in a way that was terrifying, that could uplift pieces of land by striking the ground with a plasma arc and then lifting that material essentially up the electromagnetic current and dispersing it high in the atmosphere as dust, or even hurling it into space. This can happen between a planetary pass-by, if there's a very large asteroid or comet going by. The mainstream likes to think that asteroids and comets are different things. They're not. They're the same thing. They used to think that comets were snowballs. They're not. They're rock. They know that now. They've landed stuff on them, and they know that they're rock. They have cliffs and mesas, and they know they're like little tiny oblong planetoids. They just don't know how that's possible. The reason that they give off a long tail is that it's an electromagnetic plasma discharge, like neon. And when the rocky body is coming into our little solar, what's called a heliosphere, our little sun's bubble, which is charged in a particular level, the other thing is coming with a stronger negative charge, and it has to give up its charge to the local atmosphere, and that's blown off as electrons and ions that are extremely excited, and they burst into a glow mode, which is what plasma does, and you can do that in a laboratory. Well, Anthony Peratt was playing with plasma in his laboratory, and he realized that when these things were very, very charged, they created all of these sort of funny hieroglyphs. And these hieroglyphs look like the things that are seen on Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, as Russell Schoch has pointed out in his work, SCHOCH. They also look like the stickmen or squatting man figures, the sort of bent at the knees and squatting down with arms bent facing the same way, so more like a salamander or something, or figures that have a kind of a long elongated face or duck head, like Ra, like the Egyptian gods, that have human bodies, but these long jackal and animal and bird faces. You see this all over the world too. Well, was there a period for some reason when people decided that Howard the Duck, they all wanted to worship Howard the Duck, people with like a big duck bill? Well, Anthony Pratt realized that these plasma formations, due to very, very high plasma charges in a contained atmosphere, look like a variety of these forms. Now, if you look at it head on, you might actually see the conical part of it fan out, and it looks like, a sunburst with a certain number of points on a ring. But if you look at it from the side, if you're in a different part of the planet, like in South America, Central America, or along the equator, you get this more salamander figure with two arms pointing up, two arms pointing down. Sometimes you get a tail. And you have to say, were people just fascinated by drawing this for some reason across countries, across continents, across oceans? They just all wanted to draw this? Or was this a symbol? Was this the only way they could record what they were seeing on a daily basis in the sky? Question Anthony Pratt and Rens van der Sloot and other people have been asking for a while now. Well, since 2002 or so, 2003 maybe. It's very interesting. These are very interesting questions. Can you see plasma in the sky over time? Well, if the ancients saw plasma in the sky, and they saw plasma strike the ground, plasma is another word for lightning. It's another word for neon. It can be as diffuse and harmless as neon. It can be as exciting as the aurora, and it can be a aurora borealis, and it can be as terrifying as the biggest lightning strike that we've never seen. A lightning strike as big as a football stadium, staying on the ground and machining it, and then traveling a distance, excavating material, making a canyon with flat sides and a flat bottom, just carving it down to the ground. But the sides then are formed like these little river shapes, not the little river band, although they're pretty good, but the shapes. And you get these shapes along all these canyons out west. These canyons that cut through mountain passage, that cut through very dense rock, that are now filled with rivers at the bottom, because water will take the path of least resistance. But we're supposed to think that the river carved this strangely shaped gorge that drives through the hardest rock, the most resistant rock, rather than going around it like a river would, like water would. And we're just supposed to think that these gorges, that the Grand Canyon, for example, were just carved by water, even though they can't find all the sediment from the Grand Canyon, and there's no geological way to explain the thing cutting through the hardest rock that there is. Doesn't make any sense. But lightning, plasma arcing, plasma discharges. Now, why would you have a strong plasma discharge? Our planet is surrounded by an ionosphere. This is an area of extreme charge. We have a magnetosphere that's around that, part of that. And if the sun is blasting us through huge solar outbursts of electromagnetic material, charging us, we're going to dispel that charge onto the surface of the planet, which is negatively charged. They're going to exchange charge, and they're going to tear up a lot of turf. If an asteroid comes by, it's not going to impact us. It's going to electrically exchange its charge with the planet, and it's going to explode in the atmosphere like 100 nuclear bombs. Well, has that ever happened? In fact, yes, it has. It happened in 1908 or so, I believe, 1908, in Tunguska, at the Tunguska River in I want to say the Ukraine, but in Russia, where to this day, mainstream scientists are, perplexed why something as big as, depending on whose math you like, 100 or even 1,000 Hiroshimas blew up in the atmosphere and destroyed thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of forest, and just blew apart trees and knocked them down in a circle without leaving a meteor crater. It blew up in the sky. Well, that would be the electromagnetic arcing between the charged object and the ground. And it makes sense because people saw a glow in the sky before it hit, meaning its electromagnetic bubble was already affecting the Earth before it got close enough to explode. And they saw it for days and days and days after. It happened. It happened again. It happened previously in 1859 that the sun expelled a huge volume of electromagnetic material, increasing the auroras all over the planet to the point that you could read a newspaper in North America at midnight or 2 a.m. Because the sky was so well lit. This was called the Carrington event, after the astronomer who, I guess, said, hey, shit, the sun's blowing all kinds of shit our way. The sky is alight with electromagnetic material. Well, we haven't had anything like this since 1859 in a way that would make us stop and say, it's an electromagnetic universe. But maybe the ancients who wrote their stories of Gilgamesh and their stories in Mesoamerica and in China, recording these great floods and dragons in the sky. Not dragons, but rather plasma arcs, aurora borealis effects, much stronger than we've ever seen. Recording dragons in the sky, recording huge plasma arcs lifting material out of the earth and raining it back down all over the place. There's a lot that we can't explain through the idea of slow conventional geology, and there's nothing that we can explain through slow conventional Darwinism. Now, Darwinism was set up as an anti-theist concept. In other words, the church, which said that God created everything once and it's been the same since, and you're not allowed to ask any questions, that clearly wasn't true. People began digging up fossils of animals that no longer existed, animals that frankly couldn't exist in our gravity, and they said, well, things have definitely changed. And they had to come up with an idea of how they changed. But so allergic is our mind to the idea that things change quickly, even though we know things, when they change, tend to change pretty quickly. Big dramatic changes are dramatic for a reason. They happen quickly. They happen in our lives that way. They happen in the world that way, and they happen in outer space that way. And they happen, a solar event happens quickly. A coronal mass ejection happens quickly. All of that material hitting Earth happens quickly. A giant asteroid grazing our magnetosphere and interacting with our ionosphere and then exchanging a huge plasma bolt will happen quickly. There's no other way for it to happen. So we don't want to think about that, because it means that shit can happen, and it can be ugly and fast and be terrifying. It's possible that some of these stories in Gilgamesh, some of these stories in the old Babylonian Hebrew myth-making about a rosy period of dawn interrupted by great cataclysm, or about a giant period of intense rain that really drowned everything on Earth, actually was a kind of loosely recorded memory of a cataclysm, rather than being the mythologized version where it's Yahweh being mad at us for having sex or for looking at comic books or whatever. I don't know. For not believing in him. That's the human being's psychology trying to figure out why something happened after the fact. It happened because shit happens in outer space, because it's an electrical space, because plasma arcing between large bodies happens, because plasma arcing between our ionosphere and our planet happens. So, Darwinism was set up to say, your God story isn't true. Shit happens. Things change. But Darwinism said things changed by accident, because they were fighting against an idea that things happen because the God of the New and Old Testament said so. And he said, the scientists want to say, no, that's not why things happen. Things happen for reasons that have to do with the natural universe as far as we can see it, not because of your old stupid Babylonian comic book stories. So they rejected the one idea, but in that they put forward an equally stupid idea, which is that things happen by accident for no reason. Well, that's a stupefying idea. So life happens because of an accident, and then life changes because of an accident, and it changes in such a way so as to make everything work, which is it's the dumbest idea in the world. Clearly, this is a patterned, repeating, really improvisatorial fractaline system. It's faster and better than any computer on Earth. The cells in our body communicate with each other instantaneously, the same way that the Earth recognizes the position of the sun instantaneously. It doesn't recognize where the light from the sun is, because the light from the sun gets to us 8 minutes after the sun has already moved on from that position. The Earth recognizes where the sun is now, which means they're instantaneously connected. As Walt Thornhill points out, force of gravity has to be millions of times faster than the speed of light, which means that there is communication across these electromagnetic boundaries. Let's say, as Walt Thornhill and Ralph Sansbury have, I think, argued, as Michael Faraday in the previous century were trying to get to, as Oliver Lodge was trying to get to, everything really is electromagnetic. And Walt Thornhill, I think, is the astronomer who's the guy who's going to save astronomy in this century. Whether everything he says is absolutely correct, he certainly saved astronomy from itself. If you want to do some fascinating reading, you can go to holoscience.com. I've interviewed Wallen a couple of times, and part of one of his interviews is in my book in chapter 9, where I try to give you, I think, a fair summary of our electric universe. So Darwinism was really a single-point meditation against Christianity, which, took as literal the ancient Hebrew superhero stories and forgot the electromagnetic start of the story. And the start of the story was that shit happens in outer space and in our atmosphere, and it can kill a whole fucking shitload of people. There's the fuck and the shit right there for you to pluck. I told you I would curse, and I didn't let you down. Liam, why did you have to curse? You were in such a nice role, and the kids were enjoying it. Then you said, bloody fucking god damn it, Liam, how could you curse so much? You're saying to yourself. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCYTV and Truth Frequency Radio. I told you it's a stream of consciousness event. It's an electromagnetic event coming out of my brain for your edification, your edumacation, and your betterification, your improvement and astutement and all the other mints that you can, your Mentos. That's a kind of a mint. I wouldn't eat it, though. We're going to be back after this bottom of the hour, as we say in radio, or the people who are in radio say bottom of the hour. Short plug and advertisement for me, myself, and you. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the failure of Darwinism and how it's been upended by some people at Rice University who didn't even mean to. On the Liam Scheff Show on UCY-TV, Truth Frequency Radio. Well, that was a breathless first half hour, was it not? Stream of consciousness, as I thought, but I think we've hit the topics we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. We will expand them in the next half hours. The Rice University thing's interesting. Listen, all of this stuff, I mean, I covered all of this in my book, and it's all coming through, and it comes through the work of the Eastern mystics, translated through the Western gurus, Joseph Campbell and Alan Watts. It comes through Michio Kushi and George Osawa and Herman Ihara. It comes through the macrobiotic studies that I did. It comes through the mind that's liberated to think about yin and yang and the energy cycles and patterns of the universe. And I got it into my book. I struggled a little bit. I'm going to go this far, but I wrote a chapter called How Life Works, My Rough Draft. And all the stuff that's coming through the electric universe, all the stuff that's coming through the Rice University thing that I'll tell you about in the next half hour, it's all there. Rupert Sheldrake talked about it in his books 30 years ago, Morphogenetic Resonance. But all you really have to do is tune in a way. And maybe it's harder for some. Maybe it's harder than that. But you strip yourself of the preconceptions and you begin to look at how life works. Life is a repeating fractaline connected system. And once you know it's electromagnetic, you begin to have the medium and in a way the message of how it all works. And you begin to see the formation of long threads and tendrils. And as Sheldrake talked about, I really think his best idea is one that he doesn't even talk about anymore, but of nested hierarchies of information, so that one idea, in this fractaline sense, this idea of a fractal, one idea that's small can repeat and be nested inside of really the same idea, just scaled up. And so a container can hold the thing that it is in itself, like a stacked Russian doll. And so you can get these tree forms, these root shapes. They call them dendritic forms. We just call them trees and roots and branches all over the place, spirals and branches and spirals and branches. I talk about that in chapter 11 of my book. I talk about it in chapter 9 of my book. I talk about it in a way in chapter 8 of my book, which is about Darwinism. Darwinism doesn't work. So if you want to see where I'm going from, where I'm coming from and where I'm going in the research, you can read chapters, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Chapter 10 is on plate tectonics, and plate tectonics is fiction. Talk about that a little bit more in this show. You can pick up official stories on Amazon.com and on CreateSpace. The CreateSpace has a new cover, if you want a new cover. It's a very nice cover. And you can also get it on Kindle for a song. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, coming right back. Welcome back to the Liam Scheff Show, UCYTV, Truth Frequency Radio, wherever fine talk shows are sold. I should remember to upload it to Talk Network, but I get a little overwhelmed by my reading schedule. And I get a little, I don't know, fussy and lazy. I don't know. Whatever. I'm making myself... I was doing a 1 hour show. I was very comfortably doing a 1 hour show per week. And I realized I had to do two because I needed to force myself to externalize the research that I was doing more actively, and the way that I do it is to talk it through. So you're my research therapist. You're my research buddy. Thanks very much for listening. You can support this show by finding the PayPal link below or to the side, putting $5 or $10, whatever you have, whatever you can afford, into the kitty to keep this research coming your way. I will continue to make videos about all of the things that I'm researching. Science really needs an enema. We were talking about enemas. You know, science truly needs one. It needs a continuous coffee enema for the next 10 years to loosen the impacted stool that it has in its liver, that's in its colon, that's really affecting the way that it thinks. I think that's an apt metaphor. It's been a stream of consciousness show, but that stream of consciousness has wound around the concepts of atmospheric light shows, atmospheric interruptions, that we've had a dramatic atmospheric show at different times that's been remembered, that's wreaked havoc and caused mass extinctions. I mean, when I say atmospheric interruption or atmospheric discharge, I mean mega tornadoes, you know, coupled with giant plasma arcs. You know, a plasma arc being something like the size of a car or a truck or a football stadium, but is lightning, and that stays connected to the ground and then carves a valley or a swath or a gorge. And you can see this happen. I mean, you can see the paths of lightning on Earth to this day that have carved small gullies. Now, ramp this up, because lightning is scalable. You know, there's no scale that it can't operate at. Interstellar, interplanetary, planetary object, lightning could be as wide as the object, as the current that the object can withstand. So it can be big. It can be very big. And the idea is that large cometary pass-by would have bumped its electromagnetic bubble into ours. They would have connected, and that massive discharge interchange would have happened between them. They don't hit each other. Their electromagnetic bubbles hit each other. So everything going through space has an electromagnetic plasma bubble, a charge boundary around it. And when that charge boundary hits something else that has a charge boundary, it illuminates. It begins to exchange current at high volume, very, very high speed and high volume. That's plasma. This has been tested. NASA shot a metal object at a comet called Tempel 1 years ago. And they were amazed that it burst into light before the thing hit, and then burst even further and it exploded when the metal object hit, because the metal object was a conductor and it went through its electromagnetic boundary of its stored charge. Well, it didn't expect this. NASA didn't expect this. The only guy who I know who expected it was Wal Thornhill. And Wal Thornhill expected it because, well, he's the genius, but he also understands the work of Michael. He had read Michael Faraday and Oliver Lodge, and he had read Ralph Sansbury, who talks about the subtron model of an atom, that everything is truly charged, everything is electromagnetic, that an object going through space will accumulate a charge as it passes through different regions, and as it comes into the area of a sun that has much greater charge, it's a much higher charge, stripping the electrons from its local environment, acting as an anode, it's going to force this other thing to begin to give up its charge at high volume and high density, and then go into a glow mode. So he expected it, and he wrote that he predicted it. NASA still hasn't written him a thank you note for being the guy who's the only guy who predicted that there would be a glow from a conductor intersecting a comet. Well, he did, and they haven't thanked him yet, and I suppose they're not going to, but I will right now. Thanks, Wal, for doing all you do. I think Wal Thornhill's the guy who saved astronomy. I really do. And he hasn't received credit. Inside of his circle, I think more people are becoming aware. He and Don Scott and other people have done really great work, but I think Wal's the clarifier. I think that he's we'll look at him as a modern Tesla, but Wal's not crazy, and he doesn't electrocute himself and talk to birds, pigeons all day long. So let's talk about the Rice University thing. Oh, yeah. Finishing with Darwinism, right. So Darwinism said everything happens by accident because we're unhappy with the God doing everything story. And they didn't understand that it's an electromagnetic universe. So you don't have to have accidents happening, making things happen. You have the electromagnetic patterning. You essentially have an eternal database of information stored from every activity that's ever gone on electromagnetically that's available across infinite distances, near infinite distances, I should say, because infinity is just a concept, but near infinite distance, as far as we can think, at near infinite speeds. That is, information seems to be able to pass along the electromagnetic circuitry. So if we get further into the atomic model proffered by a guy named Ralph Sansbury and picked up by Walt Thornhill, that atoms themselves are made, the particles of atoms are made by smaller charges, we're looking at that Russian doll nested idea and that nested hierarchy concept, Rupert Sheldrake, that you have a pattern within a pattern within a pattern within a pattern. That's what a tree branch looks like. You get really close to the end where it's sprouting, and it looks like, well, there's a little sprout. But then you get further, and you realize that branch is part of a branching branch. And then you get further, and you realize that branch is part of another branching branch. And further and further and further you go, till you get to the biggest weight-bearing branches. Then you look at the trunk as the primary branch, and then it keeps branching. Then you go down, and the roots are branches. And they have a slightly different consistency or different structure. They're meant to absorb stuff from underground as opposed to stuff from the air, but they're the same thing. They're branching branches, branching branches, branching, 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 branching. That's a fractal, and if you look at it from above, it's actually spiraling. You look at it from the side, it's branching. You look at it from above or below, it's spiraling. And actually, if you look at a tree from above and below, well, it's big on the bottom, big on the top, and straight in the middle, so it's, well, kind of the shape of that thunderbolt from antiquity again. The Darwinists weren't thinking about that. They were just fighting the church. That's all they really wanted to do, fight the church. Fight the church's ownership of the concepts of science or of research or of natural philosophy. So they said that everything happens for no reason, and over time things change. We don't have to know why, they just do. That should have been the giveaway, by the way, that there's natural variability within all things should tell you that it's not an accident. And that's what Darwinists say. That's what the early Darwinists said. Well, things change because there's natural variability. Well, why would there be natural variability in a static organism? Why would its children be, so intensely naturally variable so as to make a worm out of a cell and a snail out of a worm and a fish out of a snail and or a worm and a bird out of a fish and what? No, there's something else going on here. It's as though, and I talk about this in my book, Chapter 11, it's as though all you really have to do is have a wet, rocky planet in the warm glow of a star that coats it in electromagnetic energy. And in that water, you begin to unfold the patterns that are embedded in the electromagnetic signatures, and they express themselves. And maybe it takes a little bit of time for them to gain a foothold or to find the materials or whatever, but there it is. There's no beginning or end of life. There's no beginning or end of the universe. This is an eternal process that unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. And you can ask why. The why of it really isn't a scientific question because you don't know why. You can't answer. You don't know why it is. It simply exists, and you end up in Nietzschean ideas of will. There's a will that it is, so it is, but that's circular. We can't know the reasons why. That's for music and poetry and the Beatles and the Stones or whatever, or Bowie, whatever you're into. Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Rimsky-Korsakov, the Russians. Well, there's some electromagnetic universe for you. Bizet. You can't know the reason why, but you can observe the what. And the what is that it's all electromagnetic. And that everything that forms, we can't understand DNA forming in any way except as a pattern that is a spiraling pattern. These are spirals within spirals within spirals that are coding information that is read in ways that we have no idea how. We have no idea how the body, how the cell, how the cellular machinery, how the little robots that walk along these little tendrils inside, these little microtubules inside of cells, these little patterning microtubules. We have no idea how all of this happens. None, zero. And Darwinism comes along and claims that it's true and that everything else is false. They have no idea how anything works and they should be retired. So, there at Rice University, there is a researcher. Now let me read this to you. Nanotubes assemble. Rice University introduces Tesla phoresis. Tesla, after Nikolai, phoresis. Not that Nikola Tesla invented this. They're naming it because they use something called the Tesla coil. Let me read to you what a Tesla coil is for a second. Tesla coil is a radio frequency oscillator. Oscillator means it goes back and forth. That drives an air core, double-tuned, resonant transformer. I know, to produce high voltage at low currents, high voltage at low currents, high voltage at low currents. Tesla's original, so this is the thing that's oscillating a current. It's changing its current. It's going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, but like this. Tesla's original, so it's electrically operated. You're going to have a coil that's essentially, it's either, I don't know, it's going to be vibrating. Tesla's original circuits, as well as most modern coils, use a simple spark gap. That is what it sounds like, a space in which a spark jumps to excite oscillations in the tuned transformer. Transformer is going to take the electrical impulse and transform it into either a higher or lower vibration. More sophisticated designs use a transistor, or, well, okay, a transistor then is a double layer with a padding in between, an insulator in between. Our atmosphere is a transistor. We have an ionosphere on the outside, we have the Earth on the bottom. The Earth is charged, the ionosphere is charged. What jumps between them? Lightning. So between the two of them is a leaky insulator, as Don Scott, the Electric Universe, calls it, a leaky capacitor, leaky insulator. So we're jumping current between these two charged areas, like you being charged, rubbing your feet on the carpet, and then accruing an electromagnetic charge, and then that jumps onto the next thing that can hold it, which is the doorknob, the metal doorknob. So our atmosphere, our upper atmosphere, our ionosphere in space has a charge. And that ionosphere is constantly being charged. Our planet is constantly being charged. And these things, it's a spinning metal. It's got legacy charge from a long time ago, or it's accruing a charge internally at the poles. But the planetary surface charge is always different than the extraplanetary, than the ionosphere charge. So these things spark to each other. They spark, but they have to build up the charge across the distance so that it can jump. So the first charge settles in the clouds spark it to Earth, and the Earth sparks to the clouds. So we're constantly trading, and then there's above cloud lightning, which sparks it to the ionosphere. So we're constantly sparking up and down and back and forth and up and down and back and forth and up and down and back and forth between the two layers of this, between an insulator. So back to the Tesla coil. We won't explain all of it, and I don't understand the Tesla coil well enough to explain it to you in very straightforward terms because I haven't read about it enough. But here it is. A Tesla coil is an electrical resonant transformer. I think that means that it creates a resonance, a circuit invented by Nikola Tesla in 1891. It is used to produce a high voltage, but low current. So you put in a low current and you get a high voltage out of it. That sounds like a contradiction, but I will tell you more about it on coming shows as I read and understand better. High frequency, or you can tell me about it by writing me on Facebook. High frequency alternating current electricity. Alternating current means what it sounded like. Instead of it's just a constant flow, it goes back and forth. Okay, let's get to the study then. I know that wasn't a perfect explanation. Let's just say that there's an electromagnetic coil that's going on in this experiment. The electromagnetic coil pulses, right? It gives an electrical pulse. So there's a pulsing electromagnetic coil going on in this experiment. Scientists at Rice University, I'm just going to say researchers at Rice University have discovered that the strong force field, that's an electromagnetic field, emanated by a Tesla coil, that's again that pulsing coil, causes carbon nanotubes to self-assemble into long wires, really long veins, a phenomenon they call Tesla phoresis. I think phoresis has to do with the concept of forming. Phoresis, association between two organisms, phoretic, being carried. So carrying, phoresis from the Greek, French phoresi from Greek phoresis, being carried, so carrying. So your carrying an electrical current. Now what you see in the video, which I'll link this article to the show notes, what you see are things that look like iron filings, but they're little carbon fibers from nanotubes. Well, nanotubes are assembled bits of carbon that I suppose may or may not be electromagnetic carriers. I think these are then electromagnetically resonant, that form like in crystalline shape. So it's carbon that's assembled in these long crystalline fibers that are incredibly strong and durable and flexible. So it's a new material that researchers are now able to build with, this pure carbon fiber. Well, what are we made of, right? Carbon and nitrogen. The team is led by chemist Paul Cherukuri, and he looks Indian to me. He speaks Texan and looks Indian. Reports its research this week in ACS Nano. Cherukuri, can I just call him Paul? Paul sees this research as setting a clear path towards scalable assembly of nanotubes from the bottom up. So what they're doing is they're putting a coil under a liquid, like it looks like water, maybe it's saline or just water, and then they have these little nanotube splinters, like iron filings, little black dots, like little scrapings off a pencil, just floating in it. Then they put the current oscillator near it, not in it, but near it, and the things line up. They split and divide into what looks like little veins. So they build little bridges or wires. Very interesting. So you begin to see this idea of self-assembly is really electrical assembly. Whenever self-organizing and self-assembly are weasel words for Darwinists, nothing is self-assembling. It's electromagnetically assembling. But they don't want to say that, because then they kill Darwinism. The same way that if climatologists admit that the sun drives weather, sun drives tornadoes, sun drives hurricanes, they give up CO2-driven global warming. The same way that if Darwinists admit that life is electromagnetic, that things are formed electromagnetically, they give up Darwinism entirely. It's gone. It's gone. Things come into being because they come into being. The electromagnetic impulse unrolls patterns that have existed forever in different environments, using the different elements in that environment to replicate a pattern that's existed in the space of the universe forever. You don't have to invent life anew on a new planet. It happens over and over and over and over again. And this is what the last chapter of my book is gently about. I'll go more into it in my new book, because I think that it's finding constant validation in research. I mean, it's just constantly being validated. This idea, my rough draft of how life happened, that all you need is the wet rocky planet and the electromagnetic glow of a star, and the thing unravels in water. Nothing exists without water. We all have to carry around water in us. That's what is the conductor, and maybe the organizing principle. And then we can form all of the other little spiraling patterns of, what do you call those? Gemstones. Crystals, all the little crystals that make our muscles and bone and DNA. That's all forming in the water matrix. We definitely need salt to drive the electric transfer. We need sodium to drive the electric reactions. We run on the electron transport chain. So we're at base an electromagnetic organism. We're an electric organism at base. And modern biology will agree with that. Even if they disagree with a lot of what I'm saying, they'll agree with that. So let me read the rest of the article. Paul Cherukuri sees this research as setting a clear path towards scalable assembly. Scalable means that if you have it at an inch, you can make it at 100 inches or 100 feet. Scalable, plasma electricity is scalable, lightning is scalable. You can have a charge jumping off your finger. It's the same thing as a charge jumping off a cloud. It's the same thing as a charge jumping from the meteorite that caused the Tunguska thing, that caused 1,000 nuclear bombs, equivalency of energy to burst in Russia. It's scalable. You can repeat the same thing over any scale, any size. Assembly within range, but the scales are huge. Huge orders of magnitude they call it. Orders of magnitude mean to the something power. So maybe you can go to the 28th power. You don't know what that means, but take 2 and multiply it by its result 28 times. 2, 4, 4 times 2, 8, 8 times 2, 16, 16 times 2, 32, 32 times 2, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1,000. Within, what was that, 6? 2 got to 1,000 in 6 orders of magnitude. You're going to get into the many trillions by 28 orders of magnitude. Many, 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 many quadrillions. So that's how that works. Okay. The system works, just do it on paper. 2 times 2 times 2 times. Just keep going. 2 to the 20. Do go to 2 to the 10th power, then do 2 to the 20th power. Just keep multiplying. Do it on your calculator. It's amazing how fast orders of magnitude scale up. The system works by remote, and I know that's just math, but that's how plasma works. Plasma works, and it jumps orders of magnitude. The system works by remotely oscillating. Remember we talked about that? That's shifting. Plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. Positive and negative charges in each nanotube, causing them to chain together into long wires. So these carbon nanotubes, these crystalline, spiraling, what's the word? I keep losing the word. It's not a gem. It's crystal. Yeah, I said crystal. Crystalline shape are particularly resonant and receptive to the electromagnetic pulse. Well, that should tell you everything about how life happens, right? You have the crystalline shape, the spiraling shape of crystals, the crystal matrix, and you have atoms that all have different weights because they either have more electrons and protons or fewer electrons and protons. Either more electrons and protons or fewer electrons and protons. The reason I said that twice, because I wanted everybody to hear a proper modeling of the correct use of the word fewer. Okay, all right. That's for my grammar friends out there. The system works by remotely oscillating positive and negative charges in each nanotube, causing them to chain together in long wires. Paul Chirukuri's specially designed Tesla coil even generates a tractor beam, that would be an electromagnetic-like effect, as nanotube wires are pulled toward the coil over long distances. Did you hear what they said? They say tractor beam because they're afraid to say electromagnetic effect. Because once they admit what's happening here, Darwinism goes out the window. Life doesn't accumulate. And listen, Chirukuri, Paul hasn't come up with this. I'm saying this. I'm taking what he's saying and taking it to the next logical iteration, the correct level. But they don't want to say this stuff, because if they say it, they throw Darwinism under the bus. They throw that out the window. And then what's next? Virology, bacteriology, understanding the human body. We're not supposed to be injecting it with poison. We should be healing it by resonating it. Well, there is a researcher, I can't remember his name right now, it's a German name, I've talked about him before, who works with a theory of consciousness around the idea that microtubules in the brain are actually the electromagnetic holding points for consciousness, who's had good luck in healing people's traumatic brain injuries or improving memory and other things, and he's even working with Alzheimer's patients by putting through a sonic wave, what would we call that, a sonogram, an electromagnetic wave through brain scans. So he's electromagnetically oscillating the microtubules and then getting them to become active and more resilient and to be healthier. So what Paul's doing is, all right, let me keep reading. This force field effect, we just call it electromagnetic effect on matter, had never been observed on such a large scale. I'm sorry? I mean, what about everything in outer space? Paul said, and the phenomenon was unknown to Nikola Tesla, who invented the coil in 1891 with the intention of delivering wireless electrical energy. Well, yeah, the problem with that is, I mean, you can put a lot of energy into an environment and then get neon things to go into glow mode, so you can. How dissipated that becomes over distance, and you might just have to do that on a local scale. Hard to say. Electric fields have been used, this is a quote, to move small objects, but only over ultra-short distances, Paul said. With Teslaphoresis, we have the ability to massively scale up force fields to move matter remotely. Well, yeah, okay. You're using the electromagnetic force. I think that they're misunderstanding what's going on in space. The electromagnetic force is what's holding everything together. So the electric fields have been to use to move small objects, but only over ultra-short distances. I think they're not familiar with a lot of research in mild anti-gravity experiments, like those I've talked about on the show, where a gyroscope is used to make an object lighter. And we'll talk about that in the next hour. But there's been a researcher used gyroscopes, which spin so fast that they probably warp the atom a little bit and force the electrons to the outside, creating a net negative repeller or attractor on the outside of an object, which slightly insulates it from the Earth's electromagnetic field, which you could say is part of how the Earth is, how gravity works. But we'll talk about that in the next hour. I don't want to overload this right now. I probably already have. Chittikuri realized a redesigned Tesla coil could create a powerful force field, that's electromagnetic field, at a distance far greater than anyone imagined. His team observed alignment and movement of nanotubes several feet away from the coil. It is such a stunning thing to watch these nanotubes come alive and stitch themselves into wires on the other side of the room, he said. Nanotubes were a natural first test material given their heritage at Rice, where the production process was invented. The researchers envisioned many other nanomaterials to be assembled as well. Lindsay Bornhoft, the paper's lead author, and a grad student there, said a directed force from the benchtop coil at Rice is restricted to just a few feet. To examine the effects on matter, greater distance would require larger systems. Test the coil to create more complex self-assembling circuits. So they're going to be working on that. Listen to this. This is maybe the most important part of this article about how science works. Chittikuri, Paul and his wife, Tonya, also a Rice alumnus and co-author, noted that their son, Adam, made some remarkable observations while watching videos of the experiment. Quote, "I was surprised that he noticed patterns in nanotube movement that I didn't see," Paul said. "I couldn't make him an author on the paper, but both he and his little brother John are acknowledged for helpful discussions." So in other words, they're co-authors and their children. Paul knows the value of youthful observations and imagination since he started designing Tesla coils as a teen. "I would never have thought as a 14-year-old kid building coils that this was going to be useful someday." Paul and his team self-funded the work, which he said made it more meaningful for the group. How about freer? This was one of the most exciting projects I've ever done, made even more so because it was an all-volunteer group of passionate scientists and students. But because Rice has this wonderful culture of unconventional wisdom, we were able to make an amazing discovery that pushes the frontiers of nanoscience. Fuck you, Darwinism, and fuck you, laboratory science. These guys self-funded it. Children made observations because they come to it with new eyes. They threw out preconceptions, and they found what Rupert Sheldrake and many other people, and I humbly suggest in my 2012 book, Official Stories, and many other people most likely have suggested, which is that the electromagnetic spiraling fractal form rules everything and becomes everything. And now they're seeing that by applying an oscillating, that's plus minus, electromagnetic field to particles which respond and resonate with that field, they organize into shapes, very distinctive shapes. What are you going to do with that, Darwinism? That gets rid of the accident idea. Everything is electromagnetic. Everything responds electromagnetically. We're in an atmosphere full of electromagnetic charge. The Earth has a standing electromagnetic charge. We're constantly bombarded and infiltrated by electromagnetic charge. What are you going to do now? Where are you going to go now? You can get rid of your accident. You're going to have to start looking at electromagnetic interface with the planet. That's going to disrupt your climate models. It's going to disrupt your disease and disease treatment models. We're not going to be breaking the skin, the electromagnetic barrier to the inside of our bodies with metal needles that inject liquid poison. We're going to maybe start looking at acupuncture, acupressure, realigning the electromagnetic condensing points of or conductive points of our body. We're going to start looking at all of these things as being meaningful instead of being pointless abstractions, which is what you want us to think. You want us to think that everything that's electromagnetic is woo science, woo. No, the only woo people are the people who believe that life has no driving force. That's the only woo in the room. Woo. Darwinism is woo. It believes in nothing and that everything has to come from nothing. Big Bang is woo. It believes in nothing, that everything has to come from nothing. It's an electromagnetic universe. No others need apply. Others, thank you for coming. You may leave the room. This is the Liam Scheff Show. We're electromagnetically powered and authored and authorized here. You don't need anybody's permission to understand that it's an electric universe. You can buy my book and support this research, this ongoing research into my next book, American Heretic, by buying my book, Official Stories, there on Amazon or CreateSpace, or buying the Kindle version delivered electronically, electromagnetically to your device. In the next hour, we will continue this talk and go even deeper into all of it. And welcome to the second half of the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio, wherever the show is streaming today. Darwin, 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 electric universe, electric universe, electric universe, electric universe. We talked about all kinds of things. The internet is depressing me today. It seems to be nothing but a long list of things that I already know or I don't want to think about. Let's look at Facebook news feed, which is CNN for this very short generational beat that we're on. Let's see what I get. Did you know that turmeric is good for you? We've got a number of absolute psychopaths posting about, I think they're educating the world about their take on satanic rituals. Not interested, don't care, I think you're lying. Let's see. Vaxxed, headlines. Let's talk about that. All right, let's get rid of that. Who cares about your turmeric? Okay, great. Everybody knows. Sell it in CVS now. Okay. Yeah. So the Vaxxed movie premiered a couple of weeks ago. I had a pretty good rundown from a source in New York who told me all about the movie, good, bad, ugly. I can't tell you if it's a great film because I haven't seen it, but the content was, I have a play-by-play about content. I don't know about edits. I've read some of the mainstream reviews. They're wildly unsympathetic and intensely unfair. You know, if it were Hoop Dreams or, some movie about how somebody wanted to become a transgendered hippopotamus or something like that, and they really knew deep inside they were a transgendered hippopotamus, it would be an Oscar winner. But it's about how the CDC knew that there was a problem with vaccines, and they lied. They covered it up. And so nobody wants to talk about it. In fact, let me find this article. There's a guy who was writing for the Huffington Post. God help him. Doggy door. All right. Okay. Thank you. Can't you see I'm on the air? Oh, good. Oh, come on. Come on. All right. Sorry. Doggy problems. Not going to edit it unless they start doing something really weird. Barking at... Oh, come on. Okay. All right. Just stop with the crazy licking sounds. I'm making it... Come on. All right. Okay. Stay over there. So, movie Vaxxed comes out, and it's... Okay, hold on a second. This dog's got to go. Oh, hold on. All right. I'm back. So, the movie came out. I got the feedback. The feedback is that it's about how fraud was committed vis-a-vis the MMR vaccine. Okay, CDC committed fraud. It committed fraud on AIDS. It commits fraud. It commits fraud every second that it exists. But they got it on the MMR thing because they have a whistleblower, William Thompson, who refuses to talk to the press. And he continues, I believe, to work for the CDC, big brave man that he is. So then there's Andy Wakefield, who's a big guy, very big, tall, bright, smart, wide, big, tall, wide guy, also bright, I said that, who was a gastroenterologist and had his license taken away because he published a paper that said, the paper was accepted for peer review that said MMR looks to be linked with some of the gastrointestinal stuff, and that seems to be linked to autism, and it's pretty loosey-goosey. It's not like he came out and said, I hate vaccines and they all cause autism. In fact, my criticism of him or the movie or both is that they just didn't ask the question, what is in a vaccine? Okay, well, it's not my movie, so they don't get to show me what I want. They also had Luc Montagnier, and I've been writing, the producer, by the way, who's refused to didn't get back to me for 2 weeks, which is very irritating, to get the exact quote about what Luc Montagnier says about how AIDS was great, and it's surprising that CDC did MMR badly because they did AIDS so well. Well, come on. Del, I've written you very politely. I just want the quote, and I'm not going to hang you up on it forever and ever. I just want to make Monty eat his words a little bit because the CDC didn't do AIDS well. And you putting that in the movie is a mistake, unless my source has been lying to me over and over and over again, as well the confirmatory source who also saw the movie, who said, yes, that wasn't the great moment in the movie. In other words, nobody's lying. That's in the movie. Come on, guys. I'm not going to beat you up for making a decent movie about vaccines. I'm going to just say you could have crossed a couple. What do you do with an I? Dot it? Cross it? So that movie's just getting walloped in the press. But it's not because it's a bad movie. And many documentaries suck and are boring and still win awards. There are a lot of really boring documentaries that don't say much. Plastic is bad. Here's plastic. Here's how they make plastic. Plastic is bad. Okay, all right. How about this one? Global warming is bad. Global warming is caused by stuff. We don't want to do that anymore, so drive a Prius. Nobel Prize. So don't tell me that we reward movies for being good or bad. It's just what the audience wants. Like there's the new Batman movie, and everybody loves to just crap all over it. And then there's the Marvel Avengers 7, Captain America Douchebag 3, whatever. All of these movies suck, robot asshole. They all suck. They're awful. There's nothing real about any of them. There are no life lessons learnable from any of these Marvel's Avenger anything movies. Tony Stark is a weapons manufacturer who flies around in a missile. Every time that a guy takes off at more than at 100, 200, 300 miles per hour, his brains fly down his throat. His capillaries burst. He hits the ground, hemorrhaging out of every possible little orifice on his face. It's nonsense. It's all nonsense. Little chubby Scarlett Johansson runs around. She's like 2'11", and they pretend that she's some sort of ninja who can take apart 6.5 foot, 7 foot guys. Sorry, one punch and you're retiring. I don't know what else you're going to do with the rest of your career. No. These movies suck. They all suck, but nobody cares. They just decide to pick one to like and one to hate. So they pick Batman versus Superman to hate. Maybe it sucks. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to pay that much money to watch that kind of shit. And then there's the Marvel movie, and I'm not going to pay anything to see that. It's going to be on an airplane at some point. I'm going to sit there going, please let me off the plane. This is fucking stupid. Has everybody lost their mind that you think that you can get punched over and over and over and over and over again, and you're just fine? You can take off in a little tin can and crash onto the ground and just get up, and not everything is cracked and broken? Jesus fucking Christ. I've injured my shoulder it's going to be a couple of months. It's going to be 6 months, I hope, before this is healed. And all I did was gymnastics. I was not flying through the air and landing on something. So nobody cares about good movies. Nobody cares about realism in movies. So when these papers trot out their psychopathic SCI, psychopathic reviewers, to shit all over the Wakefield movie, and they go on and on and on about how he was discredited by the crazy psychopath in England who said that he wasn't right, and then other stuff, so I don't like this movie. Okay. Thanks, Roman Polanski fans. Fuck you. Fuck all of you. Fuck all of you. Fuck all of you. All of you Oscar motherfuckers. You don't care what anybody does. You don't care who anybody is. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't, you don't. You make up the reasons why. So, I haven't gotten to see the movie. I'm sure it's very sad and it will break my heart and make me sick. Not because of the movie, but because of what vaccines have done to people's families. Then I will get very angry at the movie because the movie hasn't had just the motherfucking courage to just say, I'm not in favor of vaccines, because the movie doesn't say they're not in favor of vaccines. But it's too late. It's too late to take journalistic, what's the word? To pretend that you know what I'm saying? You're not a dispassionate journalist anymore. You can't take that role. You can say, look, I used to be in favor of vaccines, and now I am most decidedly not in favor of vaccines. And you've got to come out and just say it. And everybody goes, okay, at least I know where you stand. And then they can attack you correctly. They could attack you correctly. No, it's not his fault that he tried to do reasonably honest work as a doctor, and he's been beaten up for it forever and ever. So that movie's making the rounds. And then a Huffington Post journalist, if there is such a thing, Huffington Poop journalist, and there's Huffington Post. They've even got me using their fucking insane shorthand. It's like saying LOL out loud. God, this culture deserves to be... It already has been lobotomized. It needs an enema. It needs more than an enema. It needs a coffee detox enema every single day, every single hour of every single day until it starts to feel a little bit better. So there's this dude, and he was writing for the Huffington Poo-Poo, and he's written 180 pieces of shit for the Huffington Poo-Poo, and I'm sure some of them were good, and he seems to be an okay guy. And he went to Vaxxed, and he saw a screening, and he was really moved by it, so he said, it and the discussion afterward, I bet, was people in the audience going, look, this is what's happening. And he's sitting there going, shit, this is journalism. This is what I signed up for the Huffington Poo-Poo to be, a journalist. And he posts the article, and it's taken down, and there's no real reason given, The same way that YouTube can take down your, what do you call it, your video, not your article, and just say, well, it violated the ethical, what are the community guidelines, At least YouTube doesn't just take stuff down for being pro or anti-vaccine. Although I have had something taken down for being, should I say, exposing the nuclear industry. So they don't like that so much. HuffPo pulls Vaxxed review from veteran columnist, blocks his account. As Vaxxed fever spreads by Celia Farber at the truthbarrier.com. Lance Simmons, author, whistleblower, veteran, fracking activist, and more, blah, 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 blah. It's a good article there at the truthbarrier.com. Huffington Post pulls Vaxxed review from veteran columnist. Now let's get down to the stuff that the guy said. Can you tell us a little about yourself? Asked Truth Barrier. Lance writes, I devoted nearly 40 years to politics, public policy, and public service. I don't know what that means, but it means something. I worked for 2 presidential administrations, 2 U.S. senators, 2 governors. Are these supposed to be good things? The U.S. Conference of Mayors, and briefly for the Screen Actors Guild. Well, there's something. I was a whistleblower in the documentary Gasland. Oh, part 2. Okay, well, I like them all the better now. And I'm author of 2 books, The Evolution of a Revolution. Okay, blah, 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 blah. He has been published 180 times at the thing, and according to him, a half hour later he put up the thing. I was sending it out to my network. I was alerted that when they went to access it was not coming up. It was pulled down. When I tried to rewrite it, I was alerted that permission was denied to my account, to the whole account. He tried to reach someone at the Huffington Post, and even Arianna Huffington herself. Celia writes, I passed a Barnes & Noble and noticed a new book by Arianna Huffington. It seemed to be why sleep is great, being asleep. She is sitting on a bed on the cover. Writes Celia, I have never contributed to the Huffington Post because I oppose refrigerator journalism and what I call czarist media. Czarist media, I get it. I don't understand what she means by refrigerator. Which Huffington personifies. Yes. These are both my terms. Refrigerator journalism is where writers are editorless and without attention hosting or brain contact of any kind. All right. I don't really understand why it's refrigerator, though. Maybe it's the stuff you put on the fridge. Oh, okay. Stuff a kid puts on the refrigerator. Ah, very clever. This is not publishing, editing, or journalism. Arianna Huffington is not an editor. Czarist media refers to the new terrain writers and refers to the new terrain writers and journalists found themselves in when, over the past 10 to 15 years, the Huffington Post introduced the idea of replacing payment for journalism with an imaginary currency known as access to the hive. You could set up your ideas there and have people notice them if you chose. Huffington Post argued that it could not pay its writers, but thousands of writers started tilling the new land in the hopes of one day growing money some other way. Huffington Post itself certainly did. In 2011, it was sold to AOL for $315 million, something I'm sure America Online deeply regrets. So that's a little bit about what's happening in the Vaxxed world. Again, go see the movie when it comes around, support it, see it, support it, see it, support it. I don't know why people who make movies can't be direct. That's my major criticism. Having understood what the movie is about, having read many reviews, having had my source go see the movie and make notes for me about what the thing was about, I understand that they reveal that the MMR was lied about. But until you present people, everyday people, there goes the fat one who doesn't. Okay. Until you present everyday people with the basic question, what is in a vaccine? What is in a vaccine? It's not that mother, father, aunt, and uncle complicated. It's not that hard to say, what is in a vaccine? Okay, good, I get it. It's all these ingredients. What do you do in the body? Oh, okay, that's interesting. You don't have to make the major league argument. You just have to show the component parts. I mean, I don't have to tell you not to buy a car. I just have to point to a tire report that says these tires split in half if you go over 40 miles per hour. And I say, guess what this new car has? Okay, I'm going to get a different car. At least I'm going to change the tires. I know. But, that's, Andy Wakefield had his issue and he had to grind it. And I wish that they would have hired a different director, and I wish that they would have hired some other editors and editorial review to put this concept of the MMR fraud in context of the larger vaccine question. And I don't really know why they didn't, but they didn't, and it's still making headlines, and so maybe I'm wrong. And maybe I'll see it and I'll eat my words. I'll leave that possibility open. This is a radio show at Stream of Consciousness after all, so go see the movie. And write me with your review and, keep supporting the movie because it is telling a major league truth, and I suppose people need it in any version they can get it. Now to the bigger question presented by Vaxxed. Presented by all the shit that I see on Facebook about stuff I already know. Cauliflower is good at reducing diabetes. Thanks. Yeah, I know. Just stop it. Just stop it. Stop it. Stop sharing shit that you already know, that maybe you think you know, just because you want somebody to look at your shit. Just, you know what I mean? I'll read your short story. I'll look at the cartoon that you made. You know what I mean? I really will. I'll appreciate that you took the time to be a little bit witty. I really will. But come on. Gummy bears aren't good for you. Share this article. Did you know there's a gummy bear epidemic going around? Oh my God. China's changing its currency a little bit. What? Oh, no. Don't you understand? Nobody's going to do anything about anything like this. So what's the information that you're giving people? If you're not making them smile, you're not making them laugh, or you're not making them think really hard, don't just tell me stuff I already know or sort of know. Just surprise me. I don't know. Make me laugh. Make you smile at least. Like, that's good. That was sardonic. That showed them, whoever they are. That'll go down in the Akashic records with a little asterisk. Good one, says all eternity. Akashic records joke, just in case you didn't get it. So what's the point of, not this show or this hour of it, I understand it's different than the last hour, but what's the point of making movies and trying to get people to pay attention to things that are real? Well, we're tribal. And so we look at the whole human species as our tribe. And we're hoping that by being aware and alert, saying, hey, tribal friends, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts and uncles, mothers, fathers, children and grandchildren, dogs and cats, guinea pigs and bunnies, we're hoping, lizards, fish, our tribe, we're seeing this problem going around. We're seeing this problem. This is a terrible problem. I'm going to just tell you about this problem so you know about it. And we're surprised, very surprised when people go, that's not a problem, you're crazy. Well, I posted something, I'm going to switch topics now and read to you and talk with you about this. I posted something about this, problems with dating the sand, the origin of the existence of the Sahara Desert. So I posted this, and some fuckwit, dumb, CMD bad words, all the bad words coming out in a row, all of them in a row. All of the bad words in a row. Post 100, like a 2,000, 3,000 word screed about how this proves the existence of God. No particular definition of which God. I'm assuming that this jackass is referring to his own illiterate version of what he takes his childhood reader's Bible to be. Not a nuanced idea of the spirit that moves in all things, but no, the literalized version of an old Hebrew story about we don't know what, and maybe the lightning and thunder was the important part anyway. So you can't talk about the ancient world without the people who were invented by the Roman Empire. All the Jesus people, all of you were invented by the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire invented your way of thinking about the world because it likes people to be meek and pliant and pliable. Take all the hits, turn the other cheek, lay down, get run over. At least Andy Wakefield, and let me sing his praise here, didn't lay down and get run over. He continues to go forward. And even if I don't love the totality of his message, it is good that he is there being a lightning rod for conversation and putting forward the basic idea that we should be thinking more about vaccines. And people hate him for just doing it, which is why I recommend, just going for it. Saying, yeah, I'm anti-vaccine. I changed my mind. I used to be pro. Just be, if you're going to be damned, you might as well be damned for being what you are. I doubt to the utmost sincere place that I can find that he's in any way pro-vaccine or pro-safe vaccine. I'm pretty damn sure he's anti-vaccine. And somehow he can't convince himself just to say it as though that would give them all the ammunition they want. They have all the ammunition they want. You might as well come out and say, look, I changed my mind. I reserve the right to change my mind. That's all. Okay. So this, I'll remember all the bad, anyway, kudos to Andy for being tough. And he is. And he is. Most truly is. Really. Now, I get this insane screed about, because I talk about the Sahara Desert problems with dating it, about how I haven't accepted, well, they're not being clear again. You know, is it Yahweh, or is it Baal, or is it Leviathan? You know, maybe Leviathan sat on the throne for a minute. We don't know. You know, it depends on how you read the book. Depends on who you think is the hero. Maybe Leviathan's the hero. Maybe we all misunderstood the Bible and Leviathan's the hero. It's just one of those books. It's like Memento, you know. It's like Time's Arrow. It's all told backwards. We don't know who the hero is. What if the Bible is a story told backwards, like Time's Arrow by Martin Amis? Well, that would be a different story, wouldn't it? So I get this thing, and I just delete it, block it. I'm like, I'm not listening to insanity, please. I'm trying to talk to, whoever. I'm trying to talk to the turmeric people who know that cauliflower is good for curing diabetes about something that they haven't thought about already, which is that nobody knows how to date ancient history. Nobody has any really good idea. There's some bad ideas. There are ideas of using radioactive decay, but there's a problem with that idea. So you can use radioactive decay because everything contains carbon, everything contains a little carbon-14, and after supposedly you die, it starts to winnow away. But that's all dependent upon what the atmosphere was like when you were alive, upon the sun's activity, and about what happened after you were gone, and the carbon-14 is sitting there slowly ticking off its atomic clock. And then there's a massive plasma bolt, a thunderbolt, a lightning bolt. There's a massive electromagnetic event. And the clock is reset to some degree, this way or that way, and nobody really knows what it says anymore. And then you could say, well, that would never happen. Of course, we live in an electromagnetically sterile universe. Whoops, we don't. Nobody knows how to date anything. Dating is hard. You go out, you don't know, do you make a move? I mean, do you wait? And if you like somebody, does third date stuff apply? If you go for it on the first date, you stay up all night and you screw, are you going out at that point? Or do you have to reluctantly pull back and say, that was a great adventure and we better now see if we're able to get along as friends, you know, because we did it on the first date and we're going to have to slow down a little. You know, I mean, I've had some of those in my early 20s. You know, you go out, you don't mean to go out, you meet somebody at a party and it's not a date. You just met at a party, and by the end of the night at 2 a.m., after everybody's drunk a little bit of something and smoked a little bit of something, somebody's screwing somebody, and it's good screwing, and then the next day you screw again, and then she has to go home, and you see her in a week, and you realize you haven't said enough to her to know if this is going to be a friendship, or maybe you should just say, that was really, really, really nice. I bought some flowers. Here they are. You can look me up if you're ever in town. But probably not. As opposed to the person who you get to know over time, etc., etc., etc. So, dating is hard. Dating the desert apparently is even harder. And nobody knows how long the Sahara Desert was around. Now that may not surprise you, or maybe it does. Maybe we're supposed to know. For people who know that vaccines are safe, and Andy Wakefield's a liar because he says that some vaccines aren't safe. For people who know that the Earth is warming at a very particular rate of speed, even though their estimates are always wrong. For people who know that HIV causes AIDS, even though there are no tests for HIV, and that AIDS drugs cause AIDS and kill people. Okay, don't worry about that. Even though that we know that chemotherapy is the only thing we can do for cancer, except everything other than chemotherapy, which is more effective. Even though we know that there was nothing which exploded, and we know specifically when that happened, and that's how everything exists, we just can't figure out when the Sahara Desert came about. And to me, that seems to be the least confusing of all things in a system of so many knowns. There's so much stuff that we absolutely know according to the mainstream. We know that Andy Wakefield's movie can't get a fair shake. It won't be seen, can't get a proper review for the technical qualities of the movie and the claims made within it, because it has to be dismissed out of hand. But we can't know when the Sahara Desert came about. Now, if you don't believe me, I'm going to read to you a little bit in the next half hour. This is Liam Scheff on the Liam Scheff Show. Thanks for walking through that slightly maudlin bit of me being irritated and slightly depressed and moody with the entire world and life and the failure of civilization that we inhabit, the failure of critical thinking, the failure of fairness, the failure of a meaningful tribal network that supports all of us, so we're not all either totally isolated or panicking all the time, sitting in cars for hours a day to go to some job that we don't know if we like, so that we can afford the apartment that we don't live in, because we're at the job all the time or in the car. It's meaningless culture, a culture of absolute nothing, emptiness. Yeah, it just gets to me sometimes. I don't know what to tell you. It just gets to me sometimes. It just does. What am I supposed to say? Cheerlead for you? Don't feel like it. In the next half hour, we're going to explore the Sahara Desert. I will be in a better mood. That's the way it works. I release a little poison. I feel in a better mood. The poison comes out. Good mood goes in. To the degree that you release your poison, to the same degree you can feel your happiness. I believe a great man once said. You can support independent journalism and the journalism that you will hear in the next half hour by going to the PayPal link to the below-neath place of this streaming video montage or the audio montage that's entering your brain right now. You can buy Official Stories at Amazon or new CreateSpace cover, very nice, glossy, exciting cover, new back cover for Official Stories on its 4th year. It's 4.5 years old, or what are we up to? No, not quite. It's not quite 4 years old. Not quite 4 years old. I jumped. I skipped. Not quite 4. Not 4.5. Bottom of the hour run-out groove. This is Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV. I don't know who that grumpy puss was, but I'm here to have fun. We're going to have fun in the last half hour of the show. We are going to talk about deserts and canyons and better explanations of why they exist. Yes, plasma will probably be involved. The mainstream likes to believe that everything is explicable only in their terms. Meanwhile, they don't know anything and they can't figure anything out. We have to help them. We have to help them by first confronting them. They don't know, and they need to simply ask for help. They don't know. They're in the dark. We don't need to be in the dark. We actually have better ideas. And we can present those ideas without their permission, which is the best thing about it. We don't have to get their permission to say, we have some better ideas, and we're going to present them. I don't have any speaking engagements coming up because I don't really feel like traveling. I was asked to go talk at what are those things called where you get up in front of people and yell and scream? I don't know. One of those things. And I don't like doing that. I really prefer to be an educator. I like to give a humorous, amusing talk in which people can absorb a lot of information, buy a book, think about it, talk about it. I'm not a very good activist because I just hate being a cheerleader. Go, believe this, do this, everything will be better then. Very hard for me to do that. It's just dispositionally hard for me. I see the need for it at times, or I at least see the impetus for it at times. But it's very hard for me to stand up and say, hey, if you do this, everything will be better. Because history doesn't tell us that story. History doesn't say if we do one thing, everything will be better, and if we don't do that thing, everything will be worse. It just looks like a giant clusterfuck for a long, long, long time. It's getting intensely and increasingly worse because of the amount of oil that we've spilled onto the land and that we've milled nuclear radioactive material to heat it to high temperatures, to boil water, to spin a paddle, to pull a wire, to make a little bit of electricity. So we seem to be in a terrible, terrible downward spiral, and I think that spiral is increasing in speed, and I don't think that much activism can do anything about it. I do believe in education. Why? Because it feels good. It feels good to learn what might be true. It feels good to open the mind. It feels good to engage with ideas that we were afraid of and realize they're not that bad. It feels good to address the history that we come from and realize that it's not what we were told. That history as it is not what we were told. I think that it's freeing. All right, let's go get free. We're going to the desert. And we're back. Everybody in a better mood. Not me. Let's look at this article from... No, don't like that site. Don't like that site. Sorry. Somebody wrote me and asked me for an interview, having seen a video that I made. And they said, well, we want to interview about the video that you made. And I said, yeah, well, I just don't write about that thing, so here's my website. And they said, oh, okay, what do you write about? And I said, well, I really write about the problems with science. And it just, no matter what I said, I just felt like I couldn't convince the person to click the link and read the short list of the things that I write about. So we never really got anywhere, and I'm having strong second thoughts about doing that interview. So we'll see. Livescience.com, a most commercial science site full of absolute shit, but here goes. Sahara went from green to desert in a flash. From lakes and grasslands with hippos and giraffes to a vast desert, North Africa's sudden geographical transformation, now hold this number in your mind, 5,000 years ago, was one of the planet's most dramatic climate shifts. The transformation took place nearly simultaneously across the continent's northern half. A new study finds, well, we won't know about that. The results will appear, blah, blah, blah. The findings come from analyses of dust blown west, get it, into the ocean, from Africa and dropped into the Atlantic. Researchers sifted through 30,000 years of dust and ocean bottom muck, retrieved with ocean drilling ships. I'm already having my doubts. The changing levels of wind-blown dust in the ocean sediments provide scientists, in other words, math magicians, with clues, I always love a good clue, to Africa's climate and how it has changed over time. Simply put, too late for that, a lot of dust means drier continents and less dust means a wetter environment. The wet period, called the African humid period, Jesus, that sounds ridiculously a lot of things. I was going to say, I think I went out with her, and then I read African humid started and ended suddenly, confirming previous studies by other groups. The sediments revealed, no, people interpreting the sediments decided. However, toward the humid periods, is there any other kind, end about 6,000 years ago, the dust was about 20% of today's level, 80%, minus 80%, far less dusty than previous estimates. The study may give scientists a better understanding of how changing dust levels relate to climate by providing inputs, in other words, by providing variables for climate models. What a bunch of bullshit. Sahara desert dust dominates modern-day ocean sediments off the African coast, and it can travel in the atmosphere all the way to North America. That's true. That last bit is true. What they're getting when they're drilling, some of it's probably accurate. I'll give them that, some of it. McGee and his colleagues are now testing whether the dust measurements can resolve a long-standing problem. Here we are, the inability of climate models to reproduce the magnitude of wet conditions in North Africa 6,000 years ago. In other words, we had to go all through that just to get that last bit, just to get the fortune out of the cookie. You actually have to eat the thing. They don't know why it was a tropical place and then why it became a desert. They know. Here's a more biased site, I suppose. Message2eagle.com. I don't even know why I'm going to read this to you. Just the Sahara, which is the world's largest desert, covers 1/3 of the African continent. In ancient times, I think that's an overestimation. Some 1,000 years ago, this vast area was fertile grassland. Some 1,000? No. I'm going to stop reading this. They already made too big a mistake for me to be happy with them. What changed the green Sahara into a desert face? Let's see. Shrinking ancient sea. Okay, so now we hear that 6,000 years ago, the Sahara was as green as the rolling Irish hills, as Georgia in summer. Astrobio.net, how Earth's orbital shift shaped the Sahara. Here's another one. The Sahara, the world's largest desert, was once fertile grassland. When? This fact has been common knowledge by the scientific community for some time. Oh, don't try to surprise them, but scientists are still grappling with historic data to determine whether that transformation took place abruptly or gradually. I thought they knew from archaeological data, from inscriptions, from tablets, and from houses and writing and murals that people lived in the now desert, and hippos lived, and crocs and camels and horses, and they milked cows, that there were dairy farms. And I thought they knew from archaeological data, not just... So they don't have to say that it became a desert abruptly or gradually. It became a desert abruptly. No matter... You don't become the Sahara Desert in anything less than a few million years and call it anything less than abrupt. It's abrupt. If it's 3,000 years, then it's abrupt. Okay. At the European Geoscience, Vienna, jackasses presented new evidence showing the eastern region of the Sahara Desert, particularly the area, dried up slowly and progressively. The findings of this study are that the sedimentological and geochemical properties of the lake sediments confirm that the Sahara has been drying up slowly from 6,000 years ago to reach the present-day conditions around 1,100 years ago. Wait a second. So some of it wasn't a desert 1,100 years ago, but it's the Sahara Desert. It's the biggest desert in the world. It's a quarter to a fifth or something like that of Africa. Maybe a little bit more, I'm not sure. And you're saying that before that it was a green area, and then it became the world's largest desert, and why? Was it CO2? In this latest study, it's a study, researchers analyzed the sedimentation in Lake Yoa on a yearly basis and dated it to determine when and how the Sahara region dried up. For some reason, that's dried up is, they made that one word. Other studies, hyphenated, others doesn't need to be. Other studies have used climate modeling to determine the time period that the Sahara went dry and the prevailing climate conditions at the time. What kind of modeling are they doing? Oh, they say that it's the Earth. The Earth had a close approach to the sun in the northern hemisphere in summer with August. Today, that closest approach is in January, so summertime in the north was warmer back then than it is now. Well, that means that any place that's really warm should be a desert. Oh, but, yeah. The widely held belief is that the Sahara dried up due to change in the Earth's orbit, which affects solar insolation, not insulation. They use the word solar. These people who write these articles should be punched very hard over and over again. Or the amount of electromagnetic energy the Earth receives from the sun. In simpler terms, thank you. They're talking about the amount of sunlight shining down on a particular area at a certain time. This depends on factors such as geographical, location, time of day, season, landscape, and local weather. So the equator should all be a desert, right? Because it's always in the sun and it's always the hottest. It's in the sun most, right? It should be a desert, right? Huh? It's right. The equator should be but it's no. It's what? It's all tropics. Okay, fuck you and your article. They don't know why the Sahara is the Sahara. What happened to the mysterious humans of the Sahara 7,000 years ago on Gizmodo I-09? Sahara in Central Africa is the largest hot desert on Earth. Its blistering sands practically lifeless. But just a few thousand years ago, it was home to early human civilizations. Roughly the size of the United States, the Sahara stretches across several African and Middle Eastern countries, Egypt, Chad, Sudan, Libya, Algeria, and more. Today, the desert is vast and forbidding, but a few brave archaeologists who traveled deep into the western reaches of the area over the past 100 years have discovered something incredible. There are enormous murals of Paleolithic rock art stretching back at least 10,000 years, depicting everything from animals to the clothing people wore during village ceremonies. Often the people in these paintings are drawn with very round heads, a characteristic Saharan style. Paintings that share this style probably come from people with similar cultural origins. Centuries past, paintings became more sophisticated. We see images that show Bronze Age tools, people riding horses and using clay pots. Do you have anything about the hippopotamuses in this? No. Well, they had hippos and alligators. NationalGeographic.com. Green Sahara, the great desert where hippos once wallowed. The Sahara sets a standard for dry land. It's the world's largest desert. Relative humidity can drop into the low single digits. Blah, 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 blah. Yet beneath the Sahara are vast aquifers of fresh water, enough liquid to fill a small sea. It's fossil water, a treasure laid down in prehistoric times, some of it possibly 1 million years ago. Just 6,000 years ago, the the Sahara Desert was a much different place. It was green. Prehistoric rock art in the Sahara shows something surprising. Hippopotamuses, which need year-round water. Wait, what? But the green Sahara was a product of the migration of the paleo-monsoon, they guess. In the same way that ice ages come and go, so do monsoons migrate north and south. The dynamics of the Earth's motion is motion. The dynamics of the Earth's motion are responsible? Really? Okay. The tilt of the Earth's axis varies in a regular cycle. Sometimes the planet is more tilted toward the sun, sometimes less so. I'm just calling bullshit on all of this. No. We don't get this to backdate the Sahara Desert and blame something that you say has been happening forever and ever, which is the slight wobble of the planet. No. Researchers point to Phys.org. Researchers point to abrupt and widespread climate shift in the Sahara 5,000 years ago. But I thought it was not widespread, but okay, never mind. As recently as 5,000 years ago, the Sahara, today a vast desert, blah, 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 blah. Ancient cave paintings depict hippos and blah, 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 roving herds of elephants and giraffes, a vibrant contrast with today's barren and hospitable. Blah, blah. Sahara's green era, known as the African humid period, I think used to go out with that girl, likely lasted from 11,000 to 5,000 years ago and is thought to have ended abruptly, with the region drying back into the desert, drying into a desert within a span of 1 to 2 centuries. Where did the sand come from? Tell me it was an ancient sea, and then tell me why. Tell me why. Go ahead. I'm all ears. And you can save the plate tectonics explanations, because that's not true. It's not real, and you know it. Continents don't sail around just because you want them to. Explain to me how and why. Where did the sand come from? Now researchers at MIT, Columbia University, and elsewhere, what was it too hard to list the other? Have found that this abrupt climate change occurred nearly simultaneously across North Africa. Wasn't it not simultaneous? Never mind. That was a different team. The team traced the region's wet and dry periods over the last 30,000 years by analyzing sediment samples. Oh, we've been here before. Sediment samples off the coast of Africa. All right, so this is back to the beginning. Using a technique called thorium-230 normalization, McGee and his colleague calculated accumulation rates for sediment layers every 2 to 3 centimeters along the column that they were drilling out. The technique is based on the decay of uranium and seawater. But what if there had been a giant electromagnetic event that had changed? Okay, never mind. Now let's try to make some sense of all of this in the remaining 13 minutes. Here's an article by Stephen Smith of Thunderbolts.info. I wrote Stephen Smith a nice letter, and he never got back to me. Satellite image showing a cloud of Saharan sand blowing off the west coast of Africa. Could the Amazon rainforest be only a few thousand years old? The Amazon rainforest is a moist broadleaf forest that covers most of the Amazon basin of South America, encompasses 7 million kilometers. You know what? Either choose kilometers or acres, everybody. Either choose kilometers or miles. You don't need to fucking translate it for an article. I'm not saying that just to him. I'm saying it to everybody. Just choose. I don't need both. It's fine. I'm not using kilometers and acres, of which 5.5 million, just choose, of which 5.5 million square kilometers, I can see what that looks like in my head, are covered by, or just choose acres, are covered by lush green rainforest. I know, I'm prickly. But come on. Aren't you tired of reading miles, then kilometers? Just choose. Over half of the if you're going to be an American, just go with miles. Just choose it, plant your flag in the ground and say we're stupid and we like miles. 5,000 something feet. Not divisible by anything meaningful. Unlike a kilometer, of course, 1,000 meters, very simple, very straightforward. Over half of the rainforest is located in Brazil, but is also located on other South American countries: Peru, Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, Guyana, Bolivia, Suriname, and French Guiana. You know what I liked about what he just did? He didn't say and others. He gave you the full list. The Amazon represents over half the planet's rainforest, comprising blah, 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 blah. The barren Sahara Desert, the lifeblood of the Amazon rainforest. The satellite image above shows veils of fine dust lifting off the sands of the Sahara. It is a regular phenomenon that occurs around noon each day. Countless particles of desiccated plankton dust fill the air, forming a giant dust storm many kilometers wide. More than half of this is believed to be from the Baudelaire Depression, an ancient lake bed in the Sahara. There was water there. Now, why was that? We're going to talk about why it became dry? No? Okay. The huge cloud is blown across Africa after crossing the west coast. The dust is drawn upward high into the sky. It then begins a journey across the Atlantic propelled by the prevailing winds. It's an estimated 54,000 tons of desert dust that flow from Africa to South America every day. 54,000 tons. That's not just whistling Dixie. The minerals in the dust dissolve into water droplets and fall on the Amazon as rain. In this way, a staggering 40 million tons of African desert dust is delivered to the Amazon every year. Without this remarkable arrangement in nature, the Amazonian rainforest, with all its plant and animal life and biodiversity, could not exist as we know it. The Amazon rainforest is believed to be one of the oldest living systems on Earth, about 55 million years old. Here's the problem. The numbers don't add up. The very recent formation of the Sahara Desert. The Sahara, almost as large as the U.S., wasn't always a vast, desolate ocean of sand. Around 5,000 years ago, and we've seen the mainstream agreeing with this, it was very different terrain. Subtropical paradise where deer, hippos, and elephants were hunted with giraffes, and rhinos roamed the area. They were probably hunted too. With a plentiful supply of food, thousands of hunters and gatherers flocked to live in this lush savanna. North Africa was once teeming with people. What happened to it? Where did all the sand in the Sahara come from? Recent studies, pointing to a Reuters column, have suggested that Sahara gradually shifted from savanna 6,000 years ago to its now vast oceans of sand about 2,700 years ago. That's 3,300 years to become the world's largest desert. In a previous article on this site, thunderbolts.info, it was suggested that the iron-rich sands of the Sahara were I hate to say it, extraterrestrial in origin. It was reasoned that the sand takes tens of thousands, if not millions of years to form. Saharan sand is believed to be 7 million years old, but only by the insane study that I didn't get to. It would be absolutely impossible for such a colossal amount of sand to form in what we think the blink of an eye in geological terms. Either way, the fact is the Sahara Desert didn't exist 6,000 years ago. This raises the most obvious question. How can the Amazon rainforest be 55 million years old if the Sahara is only a few thousand years old? How is it possible for a desert that until recently didn't exist to sustain tropical rainforests thousands of kilometers away for 55 million years? Using scientists' own dates, it makes no sense whatsoever. The Amazon rainforest, with all its diverse plant and animal life, can only be a few thousand years old, reasons Steve. It's not by Stephen Smith. It is by Stephen Smith. Posted by Stephen Smith. The article is by a guy called Gary Gilligan. I didn't write Gary Gilligan. In light of the above perhaps millions of years dates so often ascribed to many of the Earth's geological features such as mountain ranges, ice caps, volcanoes, rivers, and land masses, these should also be called into question. Maybe much of what we see today has been shaped by some very recent catastrophic events in the heavens. Now, what do we mean when we say extraterrestrial? Well, we actually mean not so very extra, but something that would intersect with the planet's electromagnetic bubble. Our planet has an electromagnetic bubble, and any large object that comes into it, like a series of large asteroids, comets, or even you could take Mars. Isn't Mars an iron-rich red planet full of sand? And if the electromagnetic bubbles grazed each other, there would be incredible plasma arcing, because these are electromagnetic bubbles, and they will release and equalize their differential charge, the same way that if you take two, what are those called, clamps to charge a car battery and put them next to each other, they'll spark, and the spark will jump. Or if you have accumulated a charge on your body and by rubbing your feet across the electrons on the ions on the carpet, and then you go and touch the metal door, you'll have a spark that leaps from your hand. Well, that spark is scalable, as I said in the first part of the show, and you can scale it up trillions and trillions of times. I'm going to be talking more about the whys and hows and possibilities of the world. I just want to point out that the mainstream has no idea what it's talking about. And if you don't believe me, here's an article from SciNews.com. Sahara Desert formed 7 million years ago, new study suggests. No, not 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, even though that's what the paleographic evidence, the stuff on the wall would say. A series of climate simulations. Okay, check please. Check please. Check. Co-led by Dr. Camille Contu of the Bjørnar Center for Climate Research in Bergen, Norway, suggests that the desertification of Sahara, I could use a desert, started about 7 million years ago. At least 4 million years earlier than previously thought. I thought this desert thing became a desert 5,000 or 2,300 years. What's the date of the Sahara Desert? Can anybody tell me? The Sahara Desert is often cited at blah, 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 blah. Over 9,400,000 kilometers squared. Thank you very much for just leaving it as kilometers. It covers nearly 10% of the African continent. Again, not a quarter, 10%. Very big difference from the article that I didn't read, including Algeria, Chad, Egypt, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Niger, Sudan, and Tunisia. Geological evidence suggests the desert is no more than 2 to 3 million years old. What geological evidence? And I thought that the desert formed 6,000 years ago. Or you're saying there was a desert and then it became a tropical oasis and then it became a desert again? And we want to talk about CO2 yet? Do we want to do that yet? Do we want to talk about CO2 yet? No? I didn't think so. However, a recent discovery of 7 million-year-old sand dune deposits in the northern Chad Basin has hinted at, how do they know they're 7 million years old? Isn't that a good question? I mean, how do they know? I really mean it. How do they know? They think? But how do they know? Does it have a swatch on? That's a kind of watch for you 80s, 90s kids. How do they know? I mean, how do they know? It's not a rhetorical question. How do they know? They don't. I guess it is rhetorical. They identified the Tortonian stage 7 to 11 million years ago by their fake Marvel Comics definition of the dates of the Earth, of the late Miocene epoch as the pivotal period for triggering North Africa aridity, or dryness, and creating the desert. They say aridity, so you don't go, what are you talking about? You're talking about a period that you called something for reasons you don't understand through a dating system that is changeable if you have a very strong electromagnetic strike, and you want me to care? The simulations are the first to show that the Tethys, what's that? Oh, it's a fake sea that we imagined when there was one giant continent. Shrinkage has 2 main consequences for North African climate. First, it weakens the African summer monsoon circulations and dries out the North Africa. Second, it enhances the sensitivity of the African summer monsoon and its associated rainfall to orbital forcing. Do you know what they just said? They said, cunt, cunty, cunt, we're all a bunch of fucking stupid, idiot, jackass cunts. That's what they said. They didn't say a thing. How do they know why did they say it was orbital forcing? They use the word force now to mean influence, possible influence, or a factor, an orbital factor. But what do they mean? We don't know. They're speaking absolutely fucking jackass gobbledygook. Absolute gobbledygook. The Tortonian stage thus marks the time when North Africa shifted from a permanently lush vegetated landscape to a landscape experiencing arid and humid cycles on orbital timescales. You don't know. You don't know. Now, how did they come about this model? They came about this model in a way that I really think deserves a little bit of elucidation. They came about this model, and God, I don't know if I have the article. They came about the article by inventing a model of the Earth, the same way they invented their climate models, in which they modeled plate tectonic shifts. They modeled tectonic shifts. They said that because plates shift in a way that we've never been able to observe, what we say must have happened so that things can slide all over the planet, so that giant continents can just slide with granite plutons driving all the way down as far as down can go, can just slide and slide and slide and slide and slide all over the place because we want them to. Why? 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 Have you ever... You should go look up the National Geographic video of what these psychopaths think has happened to planet Earth. It is like a bunch of drunk 30-year-olds at a roller rink, all wearing... Really, just a bunch of drunk 30-year-olds on roller skates at a roller rink, just going around and then falling over each other, and some go in the corner and screw, and then leave, and then go screw somebody else in another corner, and then they keep drinking and roller skating around, and then the guy says reverse, and they all go in reverse, and then some of them don't go in reverse, and they go the other way, and they high-five everybody. That's what the planet Earth looks like to these people. There's no rhyme, no reason, no rationale for why the continents go anywhere that people who've occasionally dated some piece of flora, fauna, or fossil in some area says, maybe this was over here, put a pin in it. Nobody has any idea where this stuff comes from. Now maybe maybe it did go through cycles of desert and tropical climate. Maybe it did, but they don't know. They know that it wasn't a desert 6,000 years ago. And they know that it wasn't a desert 5,000 years ago. And they know that it probably wasn't a desert 4,000 years ago. So what are they talking about? Why are we talking about dozens of millions of years ago, or 7 million years ago? Why are we talking about 7 million years? We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. And the question then becomes, where did the sand come from? Where did the sand come from? And if this guy, Gary Gilligan, is crazy, maybe he is, but maybe he's not. And maybe planets with giant electromagnetic bubbles do intersect other things with electromagnetic bubbles, as happens whenever there is a cometary discharge happening on the planet. We're going to come back to it. We're not done. I just wanted to introduce you to the topic of the unknowns. There are many unknowns, and they're not getting any closer. We're going to come back to it. Maybe we'll see if I can get Gary Gilligan on the show. We'll see. Maybe he can talk about his idea. You've been listening to the Liam Scheff Show. You can buy official stories in which I explore electric universe and other consequential ideas for how the Earth may have actually come about. In Chapter 9, talk about life and how it came about in Chapters 8 and 11. Talk about all the things we're being lied to in vaccines in Chapter 5, and the rest of them in the HIV sciences in Chapter 6. All the stuff we talked about on the show is in official stories, because official stories always exist to protect officials and the scientific psychopaths that require the funding to keep doing research so that they can tell us 6 different things on any given day. Thanks for listening. See you next week.